Hello and welcome to the Senteon and CIS webinar series, where we introduce the ever grateful topic of CIS benchmarks. Rich and I and our special guest this week, Tara Wheeler from Red Queen Dynamics, get to talk about 14 different settings today on how to secure Microsoft Edge. So thank you for joining us, Tara. I know we're going to get into your morning here in a moment, but you are absolutely awesome to be doing so much in one day. Awesome. So let's kick off with the introduction of Senteon here, if we can pull up the screen. So as a reminder to everyone, Senteon is hardening workstations, servers, and browsers to the CIS standards. So we are participating in Pitch It this year, and we will be at IT Nation, and we will be competing to win $100,000. So we are going on stage and giving a 5-minute presentation. So if you are heading out that way, would hope to have you there. Outside of that, yep.
If you guys win, what's my cut, bro?
Brother, you get to do more webinars with me.
You're buying the drinks afterwards. Yeah.
Right. Rich, you making it out to IT Nation?
I don't know. When is it?
November 6th. I think the date's right here on here somewhere.
Probably.
Hope so. Tara, you making it out this year?
Couple trips. I'm behind on getting.
I'm not.
Oh,
yeah, I'm not. And the reason why is, and it's not heartbreaking. It's completely awesome. It's because that's the final half of my private pilot check ride. So I get a
awesome.
No way.
It's pretty great. Yeah. I had an equipment failure. I'll tell you the story about that in a minute, which is pretty fun.
Well, that'll be the kickoff.
I watch YouTube flying videos all the time. They're fascinating.
That's awesome. So as a reminder to those in the audience, you can rewatch these episodes where we do talk about the settings. They are on our website, or you can check out our YouTube channel. If you do want to actually give Senteon a run and do a free evaluation, you can click this login button here, and you can see access to premium right away, freemium, I mean. And you can see where each setting fits across each regulatory framework, and those mappings are guided by CIS. And we're going to let Tara talk a little bit about mappings as well, because that's a big part of her life. On top of this, you can click into any of these settings. You can read about what they are, the recommendation, but even more so on the compliance side, you can learn why they crosswalk against whichever framework CIS has determined so. Outside of that, you can also run some assessments. Senteon does provide a gap assessment against CIS with all these regulatory mappings. But again, a reminder, the cool thing that we do is not just telling you what's wrong, we fix what's wrong. So we actually perform that remediation here for you, and we can provide that 15% hardened machine by default, all the way up to 100% if you want us to. So with that, that concludes the 3-minute Senteon plug, and now we can get to the things we are actually here to talk about.
Yes, which is Tara.
Yes, which is Tara. So, Tara, I've gotten to know you actually since MSP GeekCon, where I saw you get to do the most entertaining presentation, I believe, with your husband on physical security and how that relates to cyber. You gave the CIS cyber relationship to your husband's physical security relationship. And holy crap, that scared the hell out of me, if I'm being honest.
Power couple right there.
It's just another Wednesday in Newark, so it's it's scary as hell. It genuinely is, like, looking at how people don't really understand the connection between the security that they're implementing on their computers and something that's as metaphorizable as like picking a padlock, right? Or shim a combo lock or bust a zip tie. It's that really tells us what's happening inside security, and more than that, it lets us explain it to people. Every single day, I explain to people how what's happening on your machine is a lot like what happens, inside the body of a master log 141, right?
Yeah, people can understand it. Yep.
No, it genuinely is. So it's been a bit of a journey.
Yeah, I mean, it was cool for me because, in full transparency, I took some of my learnings from your presentation. I actually used them in some of my sales discussions, because you guys had absolutely hilarious photos of, a lock being placed on a gate when the gate didn't even go all the way to the wall and you could walk around the gate, right? So with these settings we're talking about, some of these settings, if you configure one of them, if you lock one of them down, there's another one that just goes right around that one. So it's about doing all of these security settings, not just doing the 5 or 6 that you know, but taking preventative security seriously and doing as many settings as reasonably possible. So,
Cool.
but Tara, let's kick off with that personal note, talking about planes. Tell us more about what you do for fun.
Oh, the nature of what I get to do for fun is I spend a lot of my weekends doing crazy stuff with checklists, right? So in aviation, there's tons and tons of checklists. So I'll tell you what happened. The challenge that I think I experience on an everyday basis is making good decisions. I think we all do, right? And I kind of turn my brain into this like decision maker. So I've been for 5 years now working on getting my private pilot's license. And it has been an interesting several years. Like I started right before the pandemic, and a bunch of aviation got weird right around then because you couldn't figure out if you were allowed to be in the same plane 6 feet apart. You can't stay 6 feet apart from your flight instructor when
That's
you're
not
inside a little
possible.
tiny Cessna. It's not possible.
No.
So I spent the last 5 years off and on, working towards this goal. And finally I finish flight school, and I get my DPE, that's your designated pilot examiner, booked. And it's booked for like last October 11th. I was so excited. It's the equivalent, you finish law school, you still have to take the bar exam. That's what's happening here. So I get ready to go and do this. And this crusty, lovely gentleman, maybe mid 70s is there. He's just fabulous. He's clearly a veteran. A bunch of people are like, don't book this guy. He's hardcore. And I was like, oh, hardcore is he? And so
you don't know hardcore.
Oh, when we get into the room, and I'm laid out, I'm kitted out. Everything is at right angles on that desk. Are you kidding me? I got there 3 hours early. So so we go through the process. He's warmed up to me a little tiny bit by the end of it, I think. And we do the oral exam, and I pass that. We do the pre-flight, I pass it. We get outside, find him. And remember, in aviation, everything is checklists, right? You think checklists are dull. All of a sudden,
procedure for every move.
Absolutely. Some of them you have to memorize. Some of them you're doing, just by reflex. Some of them are just huge and long. You got to remember where it all is. We get outside and we find out that the plane I'm going to do my check ride in, the map light, the little tiny light that you just push to look at your paper maps on your lap, is placarded inoperative. It wasn't in, and it.
Who
we
caught
didn't
it?
know what was going to happen.
You or the trainer?
The DPE.
Okay.
Or the DPE that the examiner caught. He looked at it and he said, "Hey, is that in the maintenance logs?" And I said, "I don't know, but I can find out." And we go and we find out, and that it wasn't in the maintenance logs. And if you know planes, FAR 91213, the DPE says to me, "Hey, it's working if you jiggle it a little bit." And I said, "If you jiggle it a little bit, what the hell are you talking about? If you jiggle a little bit, if it's jiggled and it works, that means you have a faulty wiring connection in there." And he said, "Yeah." And he says, "So what do you want to do?" I mean, this can go through. What if these things?
Yeah, you're right. You're making a choice as a pilot.
Yeah,
what's your risk acceptance level?
That's
are you
exactly
feeling
what
lucky?
it is. Am I feeling like, no, I never feel, no, I don't do luck. I'm a poker player. I don't gamble. So, I end up, you can go one of 3 ways. I can be failed, I can pass, or I can discontinue because of weather or equipment. So he says to me, "What's your decision?" And I'm gritting my teeth. It's been 5 years. I'm desperate to finish this thing. And I say, "I'm discontinuing this flight under part 91213. And he said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "I'm sure." He says, "All right, I got to do some paperwork." We walk in, we sit down, and he says, "All right, I'm issuing you a notice of discontinuance. If you hadn't ceased the flight, I would have failed you."
No way.
Right decision.
November 6th is when we're rescheduled to finish off the flight. And that is why I can't make it to IT, just in case anybody's wondering.
Well, that's one of the biggest problems with general aviation, right? People rush things and they don't follow their checklists and they rush. And that was what caused problems.
Sarah, has there ever been
and they matter.
Ever been a topic you can't relate back to cybersecurity? That was a perfect segue into what we're talking about today.
A topic I can't relate back to cybersecurity.
For Tara to come on, because I know she's got some big connects at CIS. Because all I hear a ton of buzz, Red Queen at CIS. So.
You are incredibly kind to say that. Hey, so just refresh a little bit what we do. So Red Queen Dynamics, we focus on the CIS controls, like Senteon and Zach focus on the benchmarks. So what we do is we ask people inside small businesses simple questions that reflect what's going on in the controls, that get to the nature and the heart of finding out what's happening inside an organization. And then that reports up to a dashboard, just exactly like Zach showed you for Senteon. We do it for the controls, for crosswalk bunches of different frameworks. Yeah, and then your MSP and MSSP, they're the ones who get a chance to solve problems for small businesses.
Yep.
And we might ask a question of a receptionist in a 30-person Indiana trucking company, a very simple question like, is your home and work email password different? Right?
Nope.
And you ask
Hell
that
no.
question, 30 to 40% of people we ask that question to, they have the same password everywhere. They're not using
Yeah.
one password, they're just using one password, right?
Yep.
It's brutal,
Yep.
man.
So
So
it
that's what we
sounds
do.
like,
Mhm.
and to set expectations for today's episode, we do have a
Sure.
45-minute window. Tara had a very special event this morning, which we'll preview,
Yeah.
but a little bit more on Red Queen before we hop into the topic today with the settings. It sounds, you just said you're asking the front desk
Mhm.
I mean, that's a security question. Are you using the
Yes,
same
it is.
password everywhere? So
Well, that's how you
how
get
is
to
it,
see the real landscape, right?
it
I mean, because
there you go.
some people will tell you what you want to hear, potentially,
Mhm.
because if they don't, it may be creating extra work for them down the line. So they're like, oh no, we got that, we got
Mhm.
that.
That's the
But
fear I
if you
wanted to
talk
bring
to
up
someone
too,
who's like,
right?
hey, how does that work?
If
And it's
someone from the
different.
front desk is afraid they're going to get in trouble, but they know their right answer and they're not following it, I mean, isn't this get caught into the loop of
But
self-attestation,
I don't
or
think you get
how do
that.
we
I'm not
overcome
feeling
that?
like you get that from based on what you described.
You don't. It's the reason that we phrase the questions the way that we
Yeah,
do. We don't ask
they're not
questions. And
intimidating.
it's not like the SATs. There's not like the exact right answer, two sort of right answers, and a stupid
Yeah,
ass answer, right? Like that's not the way we phrase it. We're looking to capture what people's real
right.
behavior is like. And what's more, we find that people who answer these questions truthfully, like we don't really have a problem with
You get
dishonesty. And
better.
the
You're
reason why
getting
is,
better data.
yeah, you
You're,
got
you're
30
not
people inside. Yeah,
you're not sitting there
exactly.
with a stick and you're gonna if they answer incorrectly you're gonna whack them in the wrist or something. No, you're
Right.
doing a non-intimidating
Hmm.
format where we're just talking about process, and it all fits right
Exactly.
into the CIS controls and gives you that really
Precisely.
nice view of your landscape and the opportunity to plug the gaps that will be apparent.
Exactly. And that gap analysis shows up. People are honest. Honestly, because they don't know what control we're asking about a lot of the
Oh,
time. If I ask the question, do you ever plug your personal USB stick into your work computer? They don't know which CIS control that maps to. Doesn't matter to them, right?
right.
But we get a chance then to figure out what's going really on inside these organizations,
Yeah.
genuinely get them ready to stay more secure. Yeah,
That's awesome
You're
to hear.
defining the attack surface.
absolutely. And we don't work directly with small businesses. Our clients are MSPs and MSSPs. We
Mhm.
care about the questions that we ask, but the truth is we're there to enable MSPs and MSSPs to have better engagements with their small businesses. And we handle 97% of the BS checklist,
Yeah.
paperwork, one-off Excel sheets that you've got to do again and again and again, making phone calls
What's
all
the
day long.
worst part about being going through all your pilot training and just being a pilot?
Mhm.
All the checklists. I mean, they're good, but
Well,
they're a pain in the butt, right? I mean, they're necessary. You have to follow them, but no one likes doing
you
it.
don't,
Let's face it. So you need
and yet,
tooling. You need help with that to
mhm,
guide you along, to point out where the gaps are, and help you fill them.
precisely, exactly. And if you don't have those checklists, you don't have a way of
You're not going to
systematically
get it
finding out
done.
what's going on. And the reason we ask the same question of different people inside organizations is the same reason that you run through your checklist every single
Yeah.
time you pre-flight an aircraft. Because sometimes something went wrong. And if you didn't systematically look for it, you wouldn't find it. Like the faulty wiring connection I find on my
Yeah.
freaking check ride.
I mean, in
Right?
99 times out of 100, maybe everything goes perfect, but there's the one time.
Yeah.
Ooh, I was on a
The
call this
one
morning with
time can
somebody who was
get
affected
you.
by CrowdStrike. Yeah. I was on a call this morning with somebody who was wrapping up their post-incident response over
Sure.
CrowdStrike, and they were like, "Well, we just never thought this would happen to
No,
us." I was like,
no one did. No one saw that coming.
"Welcome."
As far as I know, I didn't see that coming.
Absolutely.
Wasn't on
Hmm.
my bingo card. No, that's absolutely
No.
awesome. And Senteon can happily attest to that too. Answering these questions and being a partner. This is
Yeah.
something that even I don't have that formal security training. I'm not an engineer at MSP. These are questions that I
Hmm.
also answer as well. So kudos to Red Queen and what you're doing to help MSPs
Thank you.
engage better with their audience, right? And having that Senteon Red Queen relationship, right? This is
Mhm.
where you can enforce some of these policies and make it happen. So
And we're
very,
super psyched. CIS is an
Yeah.
organization
yep,
that's just super excited about what you guys are doing and a lot of buzz about it. Because anything
Glad
that
to hear it.
makes it easier for for anyone to consume our IP in this format, CIS controls with Tara, in Zach's case, benchmarks. I mean, you guys are doing what's essential for people to really operationalize our
all the stuff no one
recommendations.
wants to do, in all honesty, is what we're automating. So, but let's keep on going, because we do have to set up the expectations. We do have 45 minutes today, so it will be a shorter episode. But Tara, before we do transition to the settings, you just left something pretty awesome this morning. Do you mind introducing how you spent your morning?
I was keynoting OptiveCon over here at MetLife Stadium, which was
No
a
big
total
deal.
blast. Wonderful folks. They're lovely over there. Got a chance to see some great friends. People were busy like, hey, oh my God, saw you at DEF CON. It was a wonderful and warm event, and they had killer pastries. Always got to judge a place by that croissant, right? So it was an interesting challenge, and it's
It's
New
just
Jersey.
it's Wednesday, average day. Knock out a quick keynote, no big deal.
Hop on a webinar with Senteon and CIS. It's all just
We're
Wednesday,
honored.
right? So I'm curious about the background of a keynote, because there's only so many people who are asked to keynote and present. Do you mind shedding back a layer? Is it a keynote that you submit? Are they asking you to talk about a topic? Like, how does the prep work for a keynote go into it for you?
Well, this was an interesting one. I think the thing that I was being asked to do was just really introduce the concepts of the regulatory framework and environment that people are going to be coping with over the next couple of years.
Okay.
And not to make anybody fall asleep or anything like that, but honestly, NIS2 is going to be huge over the next coming years. All organizations, that's a 24-hour notification period for the first indications that you're in the middle of an incident, and that's just devastating.
That's a big
So
change.
a lot of these small businesses, a lot of MSPs, MSSPs, they're not prepared for the kind of regulatory frameworks that are coming and the regulation that's coming. US is doing this now too. It was yesterday that the Federal Register published the final rule for CMMC, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification for the DoD. So I talked about that, but a lot of it is just getting ready for the upcoming regulatory environment by getting rid of single points of failure in your organization and just recognizing where those are and prepping in advance for them, as well as recognizing that sometimes a single point of failure is a lot easier to illustrate if you can explain to somebody using something physical, like explaining that this right here is not lock picking. It's just a simple bypass tool, right? It's the Master Lock 141. And if you've got the right tool, which costs about 12 cents on AliExpress, you can bypass this particular security system. Use it as an example for people, right? So
Tara's
that is
not
what
at
gets
her
executive
office,
listen.
by the way. This was just on her pocket, ready to go. So that
She's
is a
traveling. You're
great
out of town, right?
demonstration.
Well, and it's because it works, right? Like it's cheap as hell. It's a security system people know and understand. Like go look at your
use that in your
U-Haul.
keynote.
Yeah, I did, as a matter of fact, and I used it really because our real challenge is explaining the exit, and this is going to tie back into what Zach's talking about with controls, is the existential nature of cybersecurity. When in late stage capitalism, we've used efficiencies and costs to drive everybody to the same solution for everything inside an organization. So heterogeneity is expensive, but it's resilient, and that's the real challenge I think people are fighting. It's one of the reasons why we do the CIS controls, but we crosswalk with everything else as well, because organizations have to think systematically about what's behind these controls instead of just blindly checking green.
Yeah, I always like to say, I've said it a million times on this episode, I love the CIS controls because they make sense, they're easy to follow, and they're ordered correctly to give you the best protection for your work effort. And just as you said, Tara, then boom, map them wherever you want to go. And it's, most of the frameworks cover generally the same things, honestly. They're all good.
They feed into it.
They do.
There's nothing bad about any of them. You just pick one and get after it. We hope you pick ours, but just you got to do one at least.
Got to do one. And, a question about asset inventory someplace is a question about asset inventory every place, right? If you pick one and do it, you're fine. And honestly, the CIS controls are the ones a lot more MSPs and MSSPs have heard of. Is that a gato? Show me the gato. Who's that little baby? Give it those scritches.
He is making some noise, so...
Oh, look at that. What's her name?
This is Bravo. He is an 18-pound small kitty.
I love Bravo.
I have two cats, and I figured out the move. I have a gas fireplace. That way, I turn on the fireplace. Cats stay right there.
Oh yeah.
You found the trick. I'm still figuring it out. So when they start meowing, I just pick them up for a little bit. But No, that's absolutely a great segue talking about the policies and the technical policies. I mean, an example of a setting for that physical lock would be to change the lock that it's built with, right? Now the master key to that lock no longer works, aka changing the default password, changing the default settings. So with that and our little time constraint, let's pull up the first slide here and talk about the first setting of the day. I'll put him down. Perfect. So the first one here, we'll get that formatted real quick, but I believe its default sensor settings is set to enabled, which means do not allow any site to access sensors. So this sounds like, it's allowing access to maybe a website or something to look at like location, some privacy. Is that what this is saying here, Tara?
Well, what it's doing is you are setting a guard between you and sites that are trying to grab extra information about who you are based on all the information they can grab from your browser. And the real challenge there is sometimes we want to give information to these sites, but it needs to be voluntary. So when we think about something like a default sensor setting, the difference here is what is passive and what is active. What are we choosing to permit versus what we don't know is happening in the background? So for a sensor setting like this, we've seen kind of some great comics come out lately, and Zach, you should completely uh, um, link to some of the great sites I've seen do some parodies of current websites right now. You'll get like sign in with Google and Facebook and accept the cookie settings, and hey, it's a GDPR notice, and do you want to sign up for our newsletter? And interstitial after modal after whatever pops up. Well, that's
Let me
also
see what I
reading a
could
bunch
find
of
and
information.
drop in there.
Yeah, throw it all out there, So, but the reason that this is happening, the reason that we're saying disable default sensor access, that this shouldn't be something you've got turned on, is you're already having to volunteer a bunch of information. You shouldn't be actively volunteering the major sites, the major ecosystems that you operate with in terms of things like, am I operating in the Apple or Google or what a Microsoft ecosystems for single sign-on, stuff like that. You want to make sure that this setting is set to default is set to enabled, and this can be a little confusing in here. Respectfully, like I love you guys, but sometimes setting a setting
This is
to enable to
Microsoft's
disable.
issue, not CIS. To be clear, we're mad at Microsoft.
I don't disagree with you. This is specifying how in Microsoft Edge, the setting specifically is enable not permitting sensors. Okay, so the setting needs to be set to enabled specifically. So set that one to enabled.
You
You could
enable
also
to disable.
you enable to disable. It's not intentionally a dark pattern. I don't think. I think it's just this is how as an engineer, I'm an engineer, we think weird, right? We're like, oh, here's a thing that I want active, and it's actually an active disabling of something that is passively always operating.
Yep.
So as an engineer, that makes perfect and total sense. As like, a human,
yeah,
it's not always easy to parse it.
These engineers didn't just build in red light, green light into your setting choice, unfortunately. So it does take some understanding. It takes that extra step, that extra pause to know, is this a double negative? Like enabling this goes against my instinct, but then it says enabled is blocking. Yes.
That's what's great about the CIS benchmarks, is because we go through the setting, we tell you what you got to do, and give you the rationale why for every one of these settings. And Senteon makes it even easier because they'll just do it for you. You don't have to go through the
Appreciate
pain of
that shout out.
that.
All right, keeping to the time. Make sure I budget this okay because we do have about 14 settings. So the next one here is delete old browser data on migration is set to disabled. So for MSPs, when they land a new client and maybe they're migrating their systems, or a personal device is becoming a home device, shouldn't the MSP want that old history gone? We don't want more stuff, or is there forensics value here? Why is CIS telling us to keep it?
This is one of those times you have to read through and carefully think through your logic about which one you want to choose. Now, there's a compliant answer, but there's also some business logic sometimes that can sometimes countervail your logic on compliance. It sucks. You have to make this choice based on your business logic, your risk analysis, and the clients that you have. The recommendation is to set to disabled because for those of you out there who've ever taken your CISSP, you know how sometimes in your CISSP exam, there's there's several different answers, and one answer is like the managerial sort of like Dilbert boss answer that's like, ensure you have all of your audit data available, and that, yeah, and then there's the answer that's like, delete it all, let the world burn down, it's better for information security. Like you want as an infosec person to be like, delete it all, why would you ever save that? In this case, the reason that it's being requested to set to disabled is because there's audit data that's really important there during a migration. What's more, your backup on this should be set to deletion of cached data on whatever the new browser or the edge migration away from or to. You should be already handling deleting that information on a permanent basis on a rolling track regardless. So there should be a backup to deleting this audit data over time.
So
But
speaking of your
for the compliance
keynote
element,
and what you're talking about here, you just gave an example of defense in depth in your answer about this one setting here, right? Complementary controls. If you accept the risk here, you should have this, right? Talk to us a little bit about how complementary controls relate back to compliance or even just security in general.
It's always hard because as soon as you start involving people in this whole situation, there's a lot of people, in InfoSec who end up as we're all Unix graybeards of a type, right? And so there are a lot of people that say, human beings are the biggest problem in information security. They're not. We're the people that are using these systems, but they are undoubtedly the largest attack surface. That's the best way to get into a system is convince somebody else to let you in, right? Hold 6 boxes full of donuts and be like, hey, could you get that door for me? Believe me, it works.
Yeah.
So on some level, figuring out how you defend against a control like this being set to disable for your risk mitigation in terms of the data history or the browser history you're including, that's a question that you can only get to if you think through why you're doing what you're doing. And that's exhausting. Let's be real. Most organizations that are small businesses can't really do that thinking. It's MSPs and MSSPs that are going to ask them a question like the one I just asked, which is it more important for you to know what happened if one of your employees screwed up, or more important to delete more data just in case? Ask it neutrally, just like that, and find out which one they really want, right? You might be less
Teaching that
compliant
communication behavior
down the line. Yeah, you might be less compliant on that unless you add a compensating control to handle it. And the compensating control for this, possibly introducing risk, is ensure you've got cyclical data deletion for your browser histories.
Yep. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah, no, that I mean, I learned that.
Go to this next setting here. It goes kind of into the same vein here with
so that's new for me.
Sorry, I think my internet bubbled. Sorry, my internet bubbled. So fun fact, I do live on a university Wi-Fi campus right now, but it is changing here in a moment. Similar to this setting, right? If I am moving houses, I probably don't want to get rid of everything I own today and move into an empty house. Probably want to bring it with me, right? So I would want to accept that. Anyway, let's get to this next setting here. So disable saving browser history is set to disabled. So similar vein as the setting we just discussed. But again, is this just more data points and kind of going down the same track you introduced?
This is an interesting and complicated one. So the reason that we do this, the reason that we keep this kind of browser history is to preserve the possibility of detecting indicators of compromise, right? IOCs are located in this place. Again, logging, a lot of the time, this is where you're going to find IOCs. This is where you're going to find information about where somebody went that gives you what you need for forensics. I'm a certified information systems auditor, just in case anybody wants to go to sleep right now.
We're already talking about settings. Don't push it too far.
I know. Have some coffee. Yeah, but one of the reasons that we do take a look at what indicator we want to save this, and you don't necessarily have to save it live so long as you preserve it in some sense or another. That's a choice that you might want to make. But it's important, I think, on this point to set it to disabled so long as you have that defense in depth about removing data later on, and it's in line with your audit and forensic principles and timelines, and probably your SLAs, right? So it's important to keep it, but at the same time, ensure that eventually it goes away. Just like everything should go away in line with whatever your data retention policies are for your organization.
And to emphasize this one too, Senteon does work with Chris Lair over at Solid Security and Eric Taylor over at Barricade Cyber, and both of them are very proficient in IR and forensics, and they too feel the same way about this type of stuff. I've interviewed them, and they talk about the criticalness of this for exactly what Tara said, with indicators of compromise, that piece of a puzzle that may not be there without this being saved. So Perfect response there, Tara. And I do want to emphasize again, careful with these Microsoft verbiage. Disable saying is recommended to be disabled, which does in fact save.
It does.
So, all right. This next setting here, disable synchronization of data using Microsoft Sync services is set to enabled. So this one, it sounds like, again, synchronizing. We've talked a lot about this with other settings, cross-platform, auto sign-in, saving, things like that. But talking synchronization, this is referring to a specific Microsoft Sync service and disabling that. So maybe there's better ways to do it outside of Microsoft. Talk towards us what this is saying.
I am vendor agnostic when it comes to whatever your sign-on solution and data synchronization are. But the reason that we do this, the reason that and when I say we, I mean the industry as a whole, requests that people disable these kinds of corporate sync services. I love Microsoft. We use Microsoft.
Yep.
But we have this disabled as well too. And by that, I mean the setting is enabled to disable the synchronization of services.
Like the other one, enable to disable.
Right.
I
exactly.
hate these settings.
Yeah, what are you going to do? But the reason this is the setting to disable it is enabled is because you should not be sharing information on a passive and default basis with any organization. And I don't care if they're one of your providers. I don't care if it's us. I don't care if it's Senteon. I don't care if it's CIS. I don't care who you are sharing information with. If it is default, if it is passive, and if it is unconsidered, right? And this makes you think about what is happening. You'll experience really quickly whether or not there's any actual enterprise impact to you not syncing your data as soon as you turn this off and you find it out if it's working or not.
Wait, nothing happened. No one complained.
Nothing happened. No one complained, and you've used a setting that decreases the amount of passive default data you're transferring to a third party outside your enterprise. Win.
I know you're not an MSP yourself, but me and you, we both work heavily in the MSP market. That's who we service. That's who we work with on a daily basis. Talking about these settings, I mean, today's episode, it's only about 13 settings, but there are thousands of these settings. There's 120 just on Microsoft Edge. When an MSP brings on a new client, someone they haven't worked with, would you, and we just talked about this, right? Break, fix, testing, making sure it doesn't cause disruption. When you bring on a new client, would you recommend for your MSP partners to enable a lot of these policies at first, all of them, a little bit at a time? Like, how do you have any best practices you can share, or is this outside of your scope?
It's not outside of our scope, and the reason why it's not outside of our scope is we serve the small MSPs and MSSPs. And what do we know about small MSPs and MSSPs? They serve a very heterogeneous environment of small businesses who all do all kind of different crap all day long. Yep. So you'll have people that are they're using Microsoft Edge that they've installed on a Mac, right? You'll get people who are trying, they can't figure out why they can't get iTunes working, and they're on a Dell, right? And but this is the kind of environment they're working in. So
it's hard.
It's difficult.
It's a lot of education.
It is. Education is a ton of today's Edge browser. Education. Never mind. Fine. So Zach gets me. It's fine.
I always love our conversations. We had a pre-interview call the other day, and I was loving it. I was driving home from Costco. We were just shooting the crap, and yes, I was looking forward to today.
It's an interesting one. The question you specifically asked is, do you recommend everybody turns all this stuff off at first and then turn it back on gradually? The answer is it's going to depend on your client. Unfortunately, it genuinely is. And that's the reason that we serve MSPs and MSSPs with a product that it solves most of the problem, but it can't solve all of it, because you can't build a single solution that works for a large enough set of the market that it's meaningful and profitable to do so. It's too heterogeneous. The answer is every MSP and MSSP knows their own client base. They know what will and won't fly, and they're going to answer that question for you.
And it's not always one size fits all, right?
Right.
There may be a valid business reason for someone to need this. What I like to recommend personally is, follow the CIS recommendations, but if there is a valid business case, make the exception, build defense in depth around that. And, because there's always going to be exceptions. Someone might have a valid reason for this. I can't imagine one personally, but if there is one, you document it and you work around it.
Yep. And my other cat wanted to say hi here. He was walking in front of the camera. So this is Bruno now, the 12-pound kitty. So.
Well, I see why you didn't talk about him until now.
I knew he'd show up at some point, so hopefully he doesn't block my camera again. But all right, we have about a 10-minute warning, so we are going to start powering through a little bit more. So the next setting here is enable autofill for addresses, and I will preview. The next one is enable autofill for payment instructions, both set to disabled. So this is super convenient and makes my life as a user. I mean, shoot, when I have to sign up for a new platform that needs my address, I just click in the browser. Yep, there's my info. Like that's nice, Tara. Are you telling me this is potentially bad?
So this is something that crosswalks with a lot of different controls and compliance frameworks about account information sharing. And the reason that you want to keep this disabled on a human level is because what you don't want is one person, you don't want, Jeff walking around the office giving his password to everybody to sign into a given setup or solution of some kind or another and have that saved at a browser level. So a bunch of different people can authorize themselves into a given account and we don't know and can't log who's had access to it. This is the reason you disable it. Whatever your password management and authorization solution is, that should be the single source of truth for your ability to get in. Now, if you've got the 1Password browser plugin, if you're using LastPass, I don't care what your password solution is. Google Chrome default password manager, I don't care. But whatever that is, there needs to be a single source of truth and not a backup filling passwords behind the scenes.
Yep, I think that's spot on. There's no reason to trust websites more than you need to, right? This is just increasing the attack surface. And again, to emphasize, these setting recommendations, not crosswalk, these setting recommendations are designed to mitigate the risk of an attack being successful, right? You're never going to get to a point of security where you will never be a target. All of us will always be a target, but it's about mitigating the risk of that target, that attack being successful. And that's what this webinar series is about. One thing I do want to shout out as well, you said these two settings, for example, map across plenty of other frameworks and regulations. At the bottom left of the slide, we do share where the setting crosswalks to a CIS control. These are benchmarks that feed into the controls. And then in the bottom right is the level. So level 1 means for everybody, like shouldn't cause that much pain at your end client, end user level. And it has enough ROI or enough ROSI so that it is worth it, the time. So just wanted to shout that out there. Tara, anything you want to add on how benchmarks feed into controls, or should keep moving on?
The only nice part is that you have as much of it automated as possible. You can't ever automate everything, but it's always great to never have to worry about something and have an eyeball on it.
Absolutely. All right, this next setting here is enable browser legacy extension point blocking. So sounds like this probably is like extensions that were compatible with Internet Explorer that made its way to Edge, still work, but probably not updated. Is that maybe what this is referring to?
I got a sick Netscape extension. I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty great. Yeah, this is your defense in depth against gaming and porn on your enterprise sites. I mean, straight up, that's what this is right here. Right?
Yep.
Yeah. Don't let other software run in your browser.
Don't forget gambling, Tara. Don't forget gambling. That's a big one out there.
No, gambling's fine. Continue.
I wish the next setting was the one two from now, because I would have a perfect transition about gambling. But we will go in order here. Again, yes, don't trust. This actually one is set to not configured by default, but in this case, the behavior of not configured is to block this. So that's at least a plus sign in the right direction. But it is critical to explicitly set these to the choice they should be, hence change it to enabled so that it stays that way. All right. Let's hit that next setting here. So enable component updates in Microsoft Edge is set to enabled. Tara, updates are bad. I don't want to update right away. I need to do testing. I need to do this and that, because if I push that new OS update, everything's going to break. Is it a little bit different on the Edge browser to allow this type of auto updates, or what are you
find your lack of faith disturbing. Always enable your any security updates you can automatically install and get it out of the hands of users. Do it. Just do it. Your chance of having a security update break everything in your entire organization is a massive, massive black swan event. Unfortunately, it's a popular one to report on. That's literally what happened with CrowdStrike. But on an everyday basis, trillions of security updates execute without problems on machines all around the world. Always auto update everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is
it's a race against the bad guys, right? I mean, because you're fixing a known hole. If you don't fix it, the bad guys are looking for it. It's a race to see if you fix it first or if they find it.
Yep. Or you can eliminate yourself from finding it and automating it using these settings to put it in place. So why trust yourself, or why trust the ticket and the ticket remediation time? You can be so proud of that 2-minute ticket remediation time. Unfortunately, automation is going to be faster no matter how fast you are. So
yes, please.
Spot on here. So this next setting here is where I was going to transition to a little bit about gambling. Anyone follow a little bit of crypto in their life? Is this a gambling?
I don't know. I'll be right back. Hang on. I gotta all right.
Check those coins, right? So enable crypto wallet feature is set to disabled. One, we're talking about work devices here, everyone.
Yes,
so why should we be talking crypto at work? You know, if you're in that
unless
industry,
you're prepping for a big ransomware payment, you shouldn't need it.
Yep.
And hopefully you're not doing that, because you're doing all the other things that you should be doing, like following the controls in CIS benchmarks.
Yep. So why don't we want to allow this on the browser feature?
Actually, for the exact same reason that you don't want to manage an employee's personal life. You don't want to let them or encourage them ever to use work devices to enter personal financial information. And I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's crypto wallets. I don't care if it's their Bank of America account.
Yep.
You should never permit the idea of somebody using their work device to enter their personal financial information in there, because you just got a whole stack load of liability. Don't do it.
Yeah, who owns that information after the employee puts it into a work device? Does the company now own that? Can they pull it? Is that okay if they do?
Probably.
You're holding data you can't make money off of that you're liable for. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Yep. So absolutely. All right, 3 more settings.
I don't know why you want to do that anyway. I would never do my banking from
a lot of people don't know that they're doing it, right? It's not really comprehended, and that's a cool thing that Red Queen's doing, is they're bringing these questions to a more of a digestible way to make everyone more aware. So very, very much kudos to what you're doing, because Gritch, that's a great point. People don't know they're doing it.
Right.
All right. 3 more settings for today. So this one here relates back to some ones that we were just talking about. So this is called enable deleting browser and download history is set to disabled. So the previous setting was talking about just being able to do it at all on synchronization and, having the ability to do it as an admin. This is now saying, hey, the admin, they can't do it, they can do it. But now we're saying the user level, whoever's on this browser, should also not be able to do it. These settings all tie together, and you can't just do one. Sarah, why don't we want users to have this type of control here?
We don't want them covering their tracks if they do something inappropriate.
Or a bad actor.
This is actually, I mean, honestly, most of the time it's going to be a user trying to do something a little bit hinky on the corporate network, right? Like, who hasn't watched a little bit of Netflix on their off hours? Right? It's fine.
Don't share our secrets, Tara. This is live.
Oh, is it? Get that out. So the answer on this one is for audit purposes, but also to make sure that people are aware. You're on a corporate device. I have no forgiveness for people who pull some crap on their corporate devices.
Yeah.
You got to know that this is happening. There's a lot of people that don't, right? So have this default setting here, and engage in appropriate retraining as necessary. And that's going to be the key on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is fantasy football season, so if you do need to set your lineups, for 2 minutes, maybe that's anywho.
Grab your iPad.
All right, the next setting here, 2 left. So enable discover access to page contents for AAD profiles is set to disabled. So this sounds like, a user trying to look up stuff that's probably not even related to them personally. Maybe they do it by accident, but realistically, this is screaming to me a bad actor gets on and has the availability to do this when it literally has nothing to do with the person's job of the computer they're on. So why the heck would we ever allow this to be enabled? I don't know. But Tara, I talked a lot there. Is there anything I missed?
This is straight up live off the land attacker profiling right here. Don't let anybody do this on a machine that you control, because, oh my gosh, this is your method for delivering just about anything that you want via whatever tone, Bing chat. Like, it's this method of doing that. This is live off the land technique right here. So take it out of their hands as an option.
Yep, and I love the live off the land statement as well, because all of these settings, they're by default the same across the board. So if a single machine is compromised, that bad actor already typically will know what they're walking into. They already know the settings on the device, because 98% of the people they break into have default settings, and they already know what it's going to be before they're there. So they know step 2 before they're even at it.
Oh, they have a playbook. It's
absolutely.
It's a checklist. They're going through
ways
to move laterally through your network and find the Bitcoin or whatever you got out there.
Absolutely.
Their cryptocurrency wallet, Rich. You got to tie it back to the episode. All right. Last setting for today, right as we meet at time. So ensure enable drop feature in Microsoft Edge is set to disabled. So drop feature in Microsoft Edge, I had to do some Googling on this one, but share a little bit about what this means.
It's AirDrop for Microsoft. Get rid of it.
Okay.
You don't want the ability to magically spread data throughout the air like tiny airborne droplets, right? You're disabling the airborne transmission of sensitive data. Stop it.
Go pandemic mode on this one.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
Stay 6 feet away. Stay 6 feet away from this setting.
It's actually, I would call it 6 feet away and an N95 mask is what that setting does.
Nice.
Slap it on.
All righty. All right. Let's show this last slide here, and we are not going to go back. We are moving. You got me tingling on the side of the screen. All right. Let's show this last slide here with the MITRE attack technique. So Tara, we're wrapping up here, but I'll put this on in the background. We are just highlighting some of the attacks that these preventative settings are able to mitigate the risk of. But please, Tara, reference this, talk a little bit with closing thoughts. How do you want to leave the audience today?
I think I mostly want to leave the audience thinking about the fact that a lot of the settings that are behind the scenes in Edge, and they're not alone in terms of browsers, a lot of these settings, if you think through them really carefully once, you never have to worry about it again. Right? You're removing tools, you're removing TTPs, tools, tactics, and procedures from the hands of people who can attack your network. And you're doing so in one thoughtful way. It's like that moment in The West Wing where Josh Lyman tells, I think it's Donna, no, it's the second pill that costs 50 cents. The first pill from the pharmaceutical company costs $250 million. Make it so you spend that time and energy up front thinking through these settings, and then every decision you make after that just follows cheaply and in an automated fashion.
Yep.
I like
Spot on. So thank you for being here, Tara. Absolutely pleasure to have the keynote speaker come on to our webinar series. We're very excited to have you.
Safe travels, Tara.
Yes, safe travels. And I know we'll have some follow-up webinars between you and myself here in the coming months.
Yeah, thanks for everything you're doing.
Reach out, folks.
We love it.
Absolutely. Reach out anytime. I'm at redqueendynamics.com. Come have a meeting with me, have a conversation. MSPs, MSSPs, I have lived your life and I want to talk with you. Just let me know if I can help you in any way, shape, or form. Thank you so much, Zach. Thank you, Rich. It was a joy and a pleasure being with you folks today. So much.
Thanks for coming on, Tara.
Yeah. Have a great day.
All right. Well, let's start wrapping up here. Rich, what do you think? Yeah, you learned some stuff today. You're in shock.
I did. Are we still live?
Yeah, we're still live, brother. Okay, we are going to start wrapping up here. Nope. So let's go ahead and start wrapping up here. Head over to that last slide. So talking about the upcoming events again, I will be over at Pitch It beginning of November, pitching to the IT Nation conference. And we can make this full screen here. We will be doing these episodes weekly. You can catch the episodes on our YouTube channel or our website. Next week's guest is Brad Powell out of Threat Captain. So he is another Pitch It friend of mine, also a competitor. And we'll have Chase Cunningham coming after that. And our friend from the Tech Degenerates, Atul, coming over after that. So 3 more weeks of good episodes. And I honestly think there's only one more episode after that, one or two. So we're closing out with the CIS benchmarks for Edge hardening. And after that, I think we're considering doing a little bit of Firefox hardening slides, but we'll see what the audience is looking for. But another week, another dozen settings. So very much thank you for being here.